You never really know the person sleeping next to you. I used to think that if you loved someone enough, truly, selflessly, they would never hurt you. I used to believe that trust was this sacred thing you built, brick by brick, through the simple kindnesses of everyday life. A cup of coffee waiting in the morning, a hand reaching for yours across the couch after a long day. But I was wrong. My name's Daniel. I'm a lawyer. Not the flashy kind you see on billboards, not the guy who chases car accident settlements. I was the quiet type, the strategist in the background. People came to me when everything was on the line, when they had nowhere left to turn. Ironically, I couldn't save myself. I met Claire during my second year of law school. She wasn't like anyone I had ever met. She had this way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room, even when you said something stupid. Claire wasn't just beautiful, she was captivating. And when she smiled, at me, really smiled, it felt like the sun coming through the window after a week of storms. We got married 2 years after I passed the bar exam. Small ceremony, just family and a few close friends. It wasn't about show for us, or at least, that's what I thought. For a while, it was perfect. I built my practice from the ground up. Long nights, endless court cases. Claire stayed busy too, working at a local art gallery. She was talented, in ways I couldn't even comprehend. She had this eye for beauty, for detail, things I always overlooked, things I thought I was too busy to appreciate. Maybe that's where it started. The distance wasn't sudden. It was a slow drift, like a ship quietly pulling away from the dock in the fog, almost without notice. At first, it was small things. A late night at the gallery that she forgot to mention. Text messages she shielded from view. A sudden shift in the way she kissed me, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. I told myself I was being paranoid. I buried my doubts under mountains of rationalizations. She's tired. I'm working too much. Relationships go through rough patches. But then one night, something cracked. I came home late after winning a major case, one that had consumed me for months. All I wanted was to celebrate with Claire, to hold her, to share the victory. Instead, I found the house dark, silent. Her phone was buzzing on the kitchen counter. One message preview caught my eye. I miss you already. Same time tomorrow? I froze. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing the ground beneath you has already crumbled away. I picked up the phone. My hands were trembling, not with rage, but with something colder, heavier. There were dozens of messages, some explicit, some worse, tender, intimate. They weren't just sleeping together. They were in love, or at least they thought they were. His name was Evan, a co-worker at the gallery. Younger, flashier, reckless. I stood there for a long time, in that empty kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. The world I had so carefully built, every case, every compromise, every quiet act of love, felt like it had been hollow from the start, a house of cards waiting for the first breath to send it tumbling down. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't rage or cry or pack a bag. Instead, I made myself a drink, sat on the back porch, listened to the distant sound of traffic, because something inside me had already shifted, something permanent. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to plead. No, I was going to think, because if there's one thing years of law had taught me, it was this. The best revenge is patient, precise, unseen until it's too late. And as I sat there under the wide, empty night sky, one quiet, bitter thought echoed in my mind. Not a promise, not a wish, but a certainty. She would regret. Underestimating me, I didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. Instead, I watched the sunrise from the porch, feeling the cold morning seep into my bones. It wasn't anger that kept me awake. It was clarity, the kind of painful, surgical clarity that cuts away illusions you didn't even know you were clinging to. When Claire finally stumbled through the front door around 7 a.m., still wearing the same dress she'd left in the night before, her hair tangled, her makeup smudged, she froze. She looked at me, sitting there so still, so calm, and something flickered across her face. Guilt? Fear? Or maybe just annoyance that she'd been caught. She opened her mouth, probably to unleash a flood of excuses, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. "Rough night?" I asked, voice low, almost gentle. Claire blinked, swallowed, set, her purse down too carefully, as if moving slowly would somehow undo what had already been done. "I was at the gallery," she said, voice brittle. I almost laughed. Almost. But instead, I stood up, stretched my back, and said, "I know." I let the words hang there between us, like a loaded gun placed carefully on the table. She flinched. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then quietly she said, "Daniel, I'm sorry." I tilted my head, studying her the way I might study an opposing witness on the stand. Sorry. What a small, pitiful word. But still, part of me, the part that hadn't yet been completely cauterized by betrayal, wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that the woman I had loved wasn't a complete stranger. That maybe somehow there was a road back from this. So I listened. I let her cry. I let her fall into my arms, sobbing about mistakes and confusion and how it didn't mean anything. I held her while she confessed half-truths, sanitized versions of her betrayal, carefully edited to make her look lost, not cruel. I didn't say much. I just nodded, listened, and somewhere deep inside, in the part of me she could no longer reach, I was already drawing the map of her undoing. Because you see, Claire didn't just cheat on me, she humiliated me. In our home, in front of our friends, our colleagues. Word would get out. It always does. I would become a joke. The brilliant lawyer who couldn't even see the disaster in his own backyard. But if Claire thought for a second that I would crumble quietly, fade away in shame, she didn't know me at all. Over the next few days, I pretended. I played the role of the wounded, confused husband. I let her move back into the bedroom, let her cook dinner, fuss over me, cry herself to sleep while I stared at the ceiling. Cold and detached. In the daylight, I smiled. At night, I planned. There was one thing Claire hadn't counted on. I was smarter than her, and I had power. More power than she could even comprehend. Because while Claire had been busy playing out her cheap little soap opera, I had been building alliances, winning favors, accumulating quiet debts from judges, politicians, powerful men, and women who owed me more than they liked to admit. And if I wanted to, I could tear her world apart, legally, publicly, irrevocably, but not yet. Not until she truly believed she had gotten away with it. Not until she lowered her guard completely. So, I bided my time. I even agreed to go to marriage counseling with her, sat there in the sterile office, week after week, while she sobbed and swore she was committed to making things work. I smiled at the therapist, nodded in all the right places, played my part like a seasoned actor. Meanwhile, I gathered evidence. Bank statements, text messages, phone records. Piece by piece, I built a case against her, one even the most sympathetic judge couldn't ignore. Because this wasn't just about divorce. It was about exposure, about stripping away the lies and showing the world exactly who Claire really was. And not just her, because Evan, the man she had risked everything for, had skeletons of his own. Skeletons that, with the right pressure, would come dancing out of his closet in spectacular fashion. I didn't want revenge for the sake of revenge. I wanted justice. I wanted truth. And when it came, it would be absolute. There would be no screaming matches, no dramatic confrontations, no shattered plates or tearful apologies. Just the slow, inescapable unraveling of everything she thought she had secured. She thought she could cheat, lie, and manipulate without consequence. She thought she could outmaneuver a man who had spent his life dissecting lies and exposing the truth in courtrooms filled with sharks. She thought wrong. Still, I waited. I let the weeks turn into months. Let her start to believe we were healing. Let her start to dream again. About vacations, new beginnings, maybe even children someday. Claire smiled more, laughed easily, kissed me like she used to. Little did she know. Every laugh, every kiss, every whispered promise was tightening the noose around her own neck. Because soon, very soon, the truth would come crashing down around her. And when it did, there would be no place left to hide. Time has a strange way of healing some wounds and sharpening others like a blade. On the surface, life with Claire returned to something resembling normalcy. Dinner at our favorite restaurants, weekend getaways. She even posted pictures of us on social media again. Curated little glimpses of a marriage she was desperate to convince the world and herself was still alive. But inside, I wasn't the man she had married. Not anymore. I had changed. I wasn't just surviving. I was evolving. The same discipline and patience that had made me a feared opponent in court was now being honed into something sharper, more personal. I started working out again, rebuilding the body I had once neglected under the weight of endless case files. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, networked in circles far beyond what Claire knew or understood. I was building something big. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me, reclaiming my life, my dignity, my future. And as I rose, Claire started to notice the shift, even if she couldn't quite name it. There was a new distance in my eyes she couldn't bridge, no matter how sweetly she smiled or how hard she tried to erase the past with empty gestures. At first, she clung tighter, more elaborate dinners, thoughtful gifts, whispers late at night about dreams she had for us, dreams she had no idea were already slipping through her fingers. Then came the suspicion, the fear. I caught her once, snooping through my phone while I was in the shower. She didn't find anything. Incriminating, of course. I was far too careful for that. But it planted a seed of panic inside her. She started asking questions she never would have dared before. Where were you so late last night? Who were you texting during dinner? Her voice was always light, casual, but her eyes betrayed her. She was scared, not just scared of losing me, but scared that I was slipping into a life she couldn't follow, couldn't control, and she was right. Because while she was busy doubting and second-guessing, I was sealing the final pieces of a plan that would destroy every comfortable lie she had wrapped herself in. There were 3 things Claire didn't know. First, that I had friends in the right places, people who would ensure the legal system wasn't just fair, but brutally efficient when the time came. Second, that Evan, her golden boy, had a history of financial fraud. And I had the proof, neatly packaged and ready for release. And third, and most importantly, Claire had made one fatal mistake she didn't even realize yet. A mistake that would not only cost her the marriage, but her reputation, her job, and her place in our community. The beauty of it was in the simplicity. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to accuse. I just needed to wait for the right moment to reveal what was already true. Still, sometimes late at night, a sliver of old pain would pierce through the armor I had built around myself. I would remember the way she used to look at me when she thought no one else was watching, the way she would reach for my hand without even thinking, and for a fleeting moment I would wonder, was it ever real? Or had I been alone all along, loving a ghost of a woman who never truly existed? But the hurt never lasted long, because I knew something deeper, something colder. I deserved better, and soon I would have it. Not through petty revenge, Not through dramatic scenes, through quiet, devastating truth. The kind of truth that reshapes lives, that writes laws. Because when the dust finally settled, it wouldn't just be Claire and Evan who paid the price for their betrayal. Their actions would ripple out, changing things far beyond our little world. And when it happened, when the final piece fell into place, no one, not even Claire, would ever again underestimate me. The day of reckoning was closer than she could imagine, closer than even I had planned. All it needed was one spark, one misstep, one perfect moment. And, as fate would have it, that moment was about to arrive. It started with a letter. Not a text, not an email. A physical, official letter. Claire found it one Thursday morning, sitting neatly on the kitchen counter next to her coffee. At first, she probably thought it was junk mail, until she saw the seal of the State Bar Association. I watched from the hallway as she tore it open, her brow furrowed. And then, I saw it, that flicker of panic, that tiny, instinctive recoil when a predator realizes it's being hunted. Inside was a simple notification. A preliminary review had been opened into financial irregularities at the art gallery where she worked. Irregularities tied directly to Evan's management of client funds. Claire wasn't the main target yet, but her name was in the file, listed as someone with financial oversight responsibilities. And even if she hadn't technically signed off on anything illegal, she was close enough to the mess to get splashed when it all came crashing down. I knew her better than anyone, and I knew this much. Claire could handle a lot of things: gossip, cold shoulders, even scandal. But what she couldn't handle was losing her social standing, her sense of being admired, envied, respected. And now, piece by piece, that carefully curated image she had spent years building was starting to rot from the inside out. Over the next few days, I watched the cracks spread. She grew quieter at dinner, more distracted. Her phone calls with Evan became heated, frantic whispers behind closed doors. I pretended not to notice, pretended to be the same steady, dependable husband she thought she had safely trapped again. But inside, I was patient, methodical, because this was just the beginning. A few well-placed calls to some old colleagues had ensured that the investigation would proceed aggressively. And while Claire scrambled to protect herself, she didn't realize she was stepping deeper into quicksand. Meanwhile, I was readying the next phase. I scheduled a private meeting with a reporter, a small local paper hungry for anything that could blow up big. I didn't tell them everything, of course, just enough. Enough to make them curious. Enough to make them dig and uncover the truth themselves. This way, when the story finally broke, it wouldn't look like a vendetta. It would look like justice. It was during this delicate phase that Claire surprised me. One night after dinner, she sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she wasn't drinking, and said very quietly, "Daniel, are you happy?" The question hit harder than I expected. For a brief second, the walls I had so carefully built almost cracked, because there was a part of me, a stupid, stubborn part, that still wanted to say yes, that still wanted to find a way back to the life we had dreamed of when we were young and foolish. But I didn't lie. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, no. Her face crumpled slightly, but she tried to hold it together, tried to salvage the conversation, steer it toward apologies, therapy, promises. I let her talk, let her spin her desperate little web, but my mind was elsewhere, already far beyond her reach. Because I wasn't the confused, heartbroken husband she still pictured in her mind. I was the man who had seen the knife coming and let it sink in, only so he could grab the wrist, holding it, and twist. The very next morning, I filed for divorce, quietly, cleanly, professionally. Claire received the papers while she was at work, standing in the middle of the gallery she no longer realized was a crumbling kingdom. According to the documents, I was seeking dissolution of marriage on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. No mention of infidelity, no public mudslinging, no ugly accusations. On paper, it looked civilized, but privately, my legal team, handpicked and ruthless, was already setting the stage for a financial bloodbath. Because what Claire didn't know was this. Thanks to careful prenuptial clauses she had never bothered to read, combined with her connection to Evan's financial crimes, she was about to walk away with almost nothing. No house, no savings, no support. I had protected myself years ago, not because I thought she would betray me, but because I had seen too many good men destroyed by love gone wrong. Call it paranoia, call it experience. Either way, it had saved me. And now, Claire was standing on a trapdoor she had built with her own hands, and I was the one holding the lever. Still, I wasn't ready to pull it. Not yet. There was one more thing I needed. One more piece of the puzzle that would ensure Claire didn't just lose, but understood exactly why she lost. It wasn't enough for her to suffer. She needed to know, to feel every ounce of betrayal she had inflicted, mirrored back at her with perfect, devastating precision. And that opportunity, that final, exquisite moment, was coming sooner than either of us could have imagined. It happened at the worst possible moment for her, which of course made it the perfect moment for me. Claire had organized a fundraiser gala for the gallery, a last-ditch effort to rehabilitate her image, to show the world she was still respected, still beloved. The mayor was attending. Board members, major donors, local press, all the people whose approval Claire needed like oxygen. She wore a stunning black dress that night, the kind she used to save for our anniversaries. And when she smiled for the cameras, for a moment, she almost looked like the woman I had once loved. Almost. I arrived late on purpose, slipped into the crowd unnoticed, watched her work the room with that dazzling, desperate energy. And then, just as she was stepping up to the microphone to give her welcoming speech, it happened. 2 plainclothes investigators from the Financial Crimes Division walked through the front door, calm, professional. They moved through the crowd like wolves through a flock of sheep. The whispers started instantly. Heads turned. Phones were discreetly lifted to capture video. Claire saw them approaching, saw the badges, and for a second, just a second, she froze. Her smile faltered. Her fingers clenched the microphone just a little too tightly. One of the officers stepped onto the stage, whispered something in her ear. Her face drained of color. I could almost hear her heart hammering from across the room. The officer didn't arrest her. They didn't need to. They simply handed her a formal summons to appear for questioning regarding financial misconduct. On paper, it was nothing dramatic, just standard procedure. But in the court of public opinion, in that glittering room, full of cameras and judgment, it was a death sentence. Claire tried to recover, tried to smile, to joke, to brush it off, but it was too late. The story was already being whispered from ear to ear, already spreading like wildfire through text messages and social media. I watched as the crowd subtly shifted, as conversations turned stiff, as friends she had counted on for years suddenly found urgent reasons to be elsewhere. It was beautiful, in a cold, brutal kind of way, because no one was yelling. No one was throwing accusations. Just silent, suffocating judgment. The slow, inevitable collapse of a social empire built on appearances. I caught her eye across the room once. Just once. She looked at me, really looked at me. And for the first time, I saw real fear there. Not fear of scandal, not fear of losing money, fear of me, fear of what else I might have set in motion. She started toward me, weaving through the crowd. I could see the desperate words forming on her lips. Please, or we can fix this, or some other lie she barely believed herself anymore. But I didn't wait. I turned, walked out the door, left her standing there, abandoned in front of the world she had betrayed. Outside, the night was cool, quiet, peaceful. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift from my chest. The first true breath I had, taken in months. This wasn't the end. Not yet. There was still one final truth she needed to face. One final blade to fall. But for now, for tonight, I let myself savor the small victory. The knowledge that she was finally, truly, beginning to understand just how deeply she had underestimated me. And that realization, more than any shouting match or broken plates, was the beginning of her true punishment. She thought she could cheat, lie, humiliate. She thought she could crawl back, fix things with a few crocodile tears and whispered apologies. But little did she know, the real reckoning hadn't even started yet. The day of the final blow was almost ordinary. Clear skies, mild breeze. You'd never know the storm that was about to come. Claire thought she had seen the worst. She thought a summons and some bad press were as bad as it would get. She was wrong, because what she didn't know, what she never even considered, was that her betrayal had set something far bigger into motion, something she couldn't stop even if she got on her knees and begged. It started with a hearing, a small one, administrative. The gallery's board of directors called an emergency session to review leadership concerns. Publicly, it was all very professional. Privately, it was a bloodbath. Claire showed up dressed carefully, trying to project strength, neutral colours, minimal jewellery, a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She probably thought she could charm her way out of it, apologise, minimise, blame Evan. But as she stepped into the boardroom, she realised something horrifying. I was there, sitting silently in the back corner, not officially part of the proceedings, just an interested party providing evidence. And when she saw me, her mask cracked. For a flicker of a second, pure terror crossed her face, because deep down she knew, if I was here, it meant this wasn't just about the gallery. This was about everything. The chairwoman, a stern woman named Marla, whom I had quietly helped, during a messy lawsuit years ago, began reading from a thick folder. Bank transfers, emails, meeting notes, all linking Claire to mismanaged funds. Not enough to send her to prison, perhaps, but more than enough to destroy her credibility. More than enough to make sure she would never work in this town again. Claire tried to defend herself, tried to explain away the discrepancies, to plead ignorance. But Marla didn't even flinch. She just kept reading, kept stacking the evidence higher and higher until Claire's voice shrank into nothing. And then, the final nail. They played a recording. Claire's own voice, laughing with Evan late one night in the gallery office, mocking donors, joking about cooking the books to cover their tracks, her words, her laughter, crystal clear. The board members' faces hardened, any last shred of sympathy evaporated, and in that moment, Claire understood. This wasn't about Evan. This wasn't about a bad decision. This was about her choices, her lies. There was no salvaging it now, no clever apology that could glue back together the shattered pieces of her reputation. When the chairwoman formally announced that Claire was terminated, effective immediately, and that a full civil suit would be filed against her personally, Claire didn't even argue. She just sat there, staring at nothing. It was over, but I wasn't finished. Not quite. As the meeting adjourned, and people began gathering their papers and avoiding Claire's hollow-eyed stare, I walked over to her, not to gloat, not to taunt, just to finish it. I set a small, plain envelope on the table in front of her. Inside was a single page. It was a copy of a motion I had filed that morning to amend our divorce settlement, citing Claire's newly uncovered financial misconduct as grounds to strip her of any claim to marital assets. The house? Gone. The joint accounts? Frozen. The gallery connections she had once used to climb the social ladder? Poisoned forever. I didn't say a word. Didn't need to. She picked up the envelope with trembling fingers, read the first line, and then something inside her broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, no screaming or sobbing, just a slow, shuddering collapse inward, like a dying star. She tried to speak, tried to form some kind of plea or excuse, but I had already turned away. Already walked out of the boardroom and into the bright afternoon sun, leaving her behind in the ruins of the empire she had built on lies. The fallout came quickly. By the end of the week, every major gallery in the state had blacklisted her. The civil suit hit the papers. Friends vanished overnight. Evan, faced with his own legal trouble, dumped her publicly and fled to another state. And Claire, once the golden girl of the art scene, became a cautionary tale. A name people whispered with pity or disgust. As for me, I didn't celebrate, didn't pop champagne or throw a victory party. I just went home, sat on my back porch as the sun set, breathed in the cool evening air. I wasn't angry anymore, wasn't hurt. I was free. And as I watched the first stars prick through the twilight sky, I realized something. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about letting them destroy themselves and walking away without a single scratch. Some scars don't heal. They just become a part of you. At first, after everything was over, I expected to feel victorious, vindicated, maybe even a little smug. But what I felt was peace. A deep, aching kind of peace that filled all the spaces where anger used to live. Claire disappeared from my life almost entirely. She moved out of state. Rumors said she changed her name, tried to start over somewhere no one knew her story. I didn't follow her, didn't track her downfall through gossip or social media, because the truth was, I didn't need to. What needed to happen had happened. Justice, real justice, had been served, not with screaming or bloodshed, but with cold, merciless inevitability, the kind only life and truth can deliver. For a while, my days were quiet. The kind of quiet that feels empty at first, like standing in a house that's too clean, too still. But slowly, quietly, I started rebuilding. Not the life I had before, something better, something stronger. I took cases I actually cared about, helping people who'd been betrayed, overlooked, silenced. I traveled a little, met new faces, new souls, let myself dream about a life where love didn't come wrapped in hidden knives. It wasn't easy. Trust didn't come rushing back all at once. It came in slow, cautious moments. A kind word from a stranger, a hand offered without expectation, a night sky so vast and pure it made you believe anything was still possible. I learned something through all of it. Forgiveness isn't about excusing the person who hurt you. It's about refusing to let their betrayal chain you to the past. It's about choosing freedom, again and again, even when it hurts. And revenge, real revenge, isn't about making someone else suffer. It's about surviving them, thriving beyond them, becoming so unshakably yourself that they can no longer touch you, not even in memory. I won't lie and say I never think of her. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I do. But when I think of Claire now, it's not with hatred. It's not even with sadness. It's with a strange kind of gratitude. Because without her betrayal, I might have stayed asleep in a life that was never really mine. I might have spent years chasing a dream that wasn't even real. She broke me. And in doing so, she freed me. There's a kind of beauty in that. A brutal, unexpected beauty. I don't know what the future holds. None of us do. But I know this. Whatever comes next, love, heartbreak, triumph, failure, I'll face it with open eyes, steady hands, and a heart that knows its own worth. And no one, no matter how charming, how beautiful, how persuasive, will ever make me forget that again. The sun is rising as I write this. A new day, a clean slate, and for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid. I'm ready.